Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. As always, I am subject. I have Robert Nosferatu, Dracula somewhere in the middle, Wild,
Good evening.
and Noah the Invisible Man. Who I didn't guess you guys didn't know that was in Nosferatu, but it is. Um,
He shows up at the end for a quick cameo.
yeah, but you can't see him.
He's voiced by Vincent Price, though.
Yay. We're here to talk about a vampire movie that Noah picked. Noah, what did you pick and
Yeah.
why?
Well, first off, to explain why there are even picks, this is the first in our 2025 series on decades of horror, and we're doing a bit of a vampire theme this year. So with that, I chose the 70s Nosferatu film directed by Werner Herzog. Mostly because I wanted to watch it this month anyway, but also it fit into with our plans for this mini series, and yeah, that's why I chose it.
Real quick, I this one I do want to bring up because I forgot about that. Slasher Fred mentions that this came out the same year as the Dracula remake with Frank Langella, which I think I have seen was pretty
That's
good.
right.
That's interesting. Is that the only time we've had a or a Dracula and a Nosferatu in the same year?
I believe so. Though I'm sure there was some shitty like Tubi Dracula movie
Yeah,
that came out last year. If we're not counting those, then yeah, I believe
major like
we've had that happen.
studio.
Yeah, yeah.
Although we'll get into it. I don't know why this is called Nosferatu, other than it's taking some of the look of that movie. But
A lot of the look.
well, designs, look is a whole other matter. We'll get into that more too. Robert,
Yeah.
is this your first watch, or had you seen this before?
I saw this before last year in the lead up to the Robert Eggers version coming out. I watched a bunch of Dracula movies, including this one for the first time. And last year when I watched it, I watched the German cut. And this time I watched the English language version since that's what was on Amazon Prime. So I have now seen both cuts that exist of this movie. And for people who don't know, it's not just a dubbing situation. It's when they filmed this movie, they actually filmed two versions of each scene, one where the actors were speaking English and one where they were speaking German. And I think generally speaking, the German one is favored, but they're still like the exact same film. There aren't any substantial differences,
Mhm.
but I can say I've seen both.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
I was
right.
kind of hoping for that because John, I assume, has only seen the English version, and then I have only seen the German version. So Robert fills in the middle there.
yes, I have only seen the English one because
That's
that's
pretty
what was on
badass.
Amazon. And spoiler alert, I wouldn't pay for this movie. But we'll get into
Oh,
it. Noah, since this is your pick, what did you think of the 1979 Nosferatu?
I really liked the 1979.
Oh no.
Like I said in the intro, I was planning on watching this movie anyway. My friend has the Screen Factory Blu-ray for it, which has both cuts of the movie. And because this is that fun fact about this, how there's two different versions, is something that I always forget when thinking about this movie for some reason, and I literally did not remember that fact until when we were about to watch it. And I was like, "Oh, let's watch the German version because I've heard that flows a bit better anyway." Um, but yeah, overall, the experience of watching the German version at least was really positive for me. I like the more kind of surreal approach to the story. I like a lot of the technical choices. It's got great performances. From what I can tell, I'm not fluent in German or anything, but like the way the lines are being delivered, it's very compelling. Um, it's got a good cast to it. It has Isabella Ajani, who I know from Possession. She's very good at playing like hysterical. and crazy as evidence in that movie, and she's very good in this too. Um, but yeah, no, overall, I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's my favorite version of this story, but I do respect what it's trying to do.
Robert, what did you think of Nosferatu? How much did you love it? You're muted.
I, I there we
Nope.
go. That was Silent Robert coming in, but that's not the version we're reviewing. I like this movie. It's not one I'd go back to a lot, like just for fun or just on my own. It's what I find interesting about this is how it compares and contrasts with the other Dracula adaptations, specifically the Nosferatu films. I that's what I get most out of this is just how it relates to those, and it's kind of this in between, and Werner Herzog's take on it. For me personally, it's not definitely not my favorite of them, but I appreciate it for what it is. What I one thing I like about this is just how naturalistic and blunt it is in the way it's shot. Like the way it's photographed is very simple and real. Lots of real occasions, little to no special effects and all that jazz. It's very straightforward and simple. But the way it's edited and the way the music is used gives it kind of that surreal, dreamlike quality Noah was talking about. Like this is a very melancholy film. It's a very somber, slow movie, and if that's not your thing, you're probably not gonna like this. Uh, Whereas the Robert Eggers one is a much bigger budget, more traditional Hollywood bombastic film. But for me personally, has a story that I get a little more out of. But as an experience, I like this film well enough. And like Noah was said, the actress Klaus Kinski as Count Dracula here. I think the whole cast is great. I like the look of it. Yeah, it's a very moody, melancholy film and very creepy at times. And I enjoy it. It's not my favorite thing. I probably won't rewatch it a whole lot, but I appreciate it.
Real quick, Teddy
All
says there are
right.
3 Nosferatu films, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened 3 times. That is, oh, there's more than that, my friend. There's more than that. And Adam Arch is in the chat. Hey, Adam Arch, how's it going? Um,
Yeah, March.
well, nothing new. I'll be the Debbie Downer. I think this movie fails on every single level. The
Oh no.
It looks like crap.
Sorry, go on.
The monster has no presence or threat to him. And like the main woman was fine, but like I don't know, she's just there. Huge downgrade from her performance in Possession. Um, yeah, no, this is the worst version of Nosferatu that I've seen of the big 3 that I've seen.
Wow. I don't think I
I don't
expected you to
agree
go
with
that
pretty much
negative
any of
on it.
that.
Um,
Interesting. I don't know where to start.
Nosferatu is a gothic horror film without any of the gothic atmosphere or architecture in this version. Instead, everything looks overexposed and
You know this was shot in
Uh,
Germany, right?
and
so, all right, okay. So John, I will give you that. This is probably my least favorite of the 3. The original, this movie, and Robert Eggers. Uh, the original obviously has a stronger like visual identity to it because it's classic German expressionism. This is not exactly going for the same thing, but I don't know. I feel like the way that it's shot is still good, and like the lighting was still very. I didn't have
Yeah.
the kind of overexposed thing that you're talking about. Like Robert said, I like that they use a lot of actual locations, like particularly the scenes where he's like going battle and like kind of like the landscape kind of shots. Those are really well done. Um, I don't know. I didn't really have any of those like technical complaints that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a vampire movie and a Nosferatu movie. I want it to be dark and atmospheric and creepy. This looks nothing like that. And then, like I said, the monster has no presence or threat to him. He's just kind of there.
And
Uh,
I don't agree with that at all. I think he's
Yeah, I
creepy
disagree
and
with that.
subdued in what he's doing.
I mean, you can compare him to either of the other two,
Um,
not Count Orlok's or Dracula, whatever. And
or
he's
Dracula.
far less menacing than either of them.
I think the scene when it's just him and Jonathan is pretty creepy at the dinner table. And then it
Yeah,
gets pretty tense when he
and
like forces him back to where the fireplace is after he drinks some of his blood. Like I think he's got plenty presence to him.
yeah, and the scene where he shows up at his bedside, like when he just like
Yeah.
approaches through the doorway, like that also my friend kind of pointed out when we watched it that this I do feel like a lot of or there's a few different examples of them like paying homage to like the iconography of the original movie, and I thought that was one example of that of how they're kind of like dramatically overacting in a way, like physically acting,
Mhm.
and like the way that Count Orlok kind of glides to him at the bed. Like I don't know, like I found him to have a lot of presence and be pretty menacing for what the part was.
My favorite scene, or one of my favorite scenes with him, is when he confronts the female lead in her room, and she's looking in a mirror, and in the mirror, in the reflection, you can see the door open and his shadow coming into frame, but he's not
Yes,
in frame. Like I think that's a very cool scene.
that was really well done. And that's also like throwing back to the iconography of the silent film because
Mhm.
obviously that used shadow to its advantage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the castle in this. They filmed at a real castle for both the interiors and exteriors, and I don't know, it's just got such a specific, unique look to it that I think is neat.
Hmm.
And what I like about Klaus Kinski's performance compared to Bill Skarsgård in the new one, it's not for me. It's not really a matter of preference. I just find each take interesting. Where what the Robert Eggers film really leans into is the Count being an abuser, like the film being about a toxic relationship, and he's very strong and powerful and threat. He's very physically threatening in that movie,
Hmm.
and that the heart of that movie is like this toxic relationship that's going on, and him being this abuser. The Count in this movie is portrayed as more of a creep and just like more of like a sexual deviant, and not as much as that kind of abuser. This guy is just a weird, sad loner. And that's the angle
Yes.
that I think this movie goes for. That's interesting because he has that scene where he talks about um, how living forever isn't all it's cracked up to be, and he's a very sad. He's a very sad, pathetic guy, but I still think he has a creepiness to him, and just the way like him preying on the girl at the end is portrayed in just a different creepy way, and I think it
Yeah.
works.
Glad you used that. I'm glad you described it that way because I would actually agree. The main word I would use for his performance is pathetic.
But I don't think the
This
performance is pathetic. I think he's great.
not okay. Let me rephrase that. I'm not saying that he's doing a bad job at it. I'm saying what he is directed to do is act pathetic. But that doesn't
Yeah.
work when this is a vampire movie and
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be scared of the vampire. I'm not scared of the vampire. I'm embarrassed for him.
I still find him
In in
creepy.
that regard, I do get what you're saying, John.
Yeah.
Um, for me, that just didn't really take away from the menace and like scariness that he still had. Um, but Robert, I'm glad that you brought up that theme though, and like the more pathetic aspect of this version, Because that's kind of what I appreciated about this version as its own thing. I prefer the Robert Eggers version where he is just more of like a straight bad guy.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like the version of Dracula in general that I prefer. I do think that like the Coppola version goes too far the other way too, and making him too sympathetic, where I'm not scared of him at all in that movie. But I prefer like the Nosferatu version where it's even with this, like I'm not totally against him being sympathetic, but we get just enough information uh, that makes him sympathetic, and also he still has that presence to him.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's just my thoughts on it.
And one thing I want to talk about that Slasher Fred mentioned in the live chat is, Nosferatu, that German film, is homaged in so many Dracula movies, like the Coppola one, with certain shots, and also obviously the original Nosferatu, as we know, was created to bypass copyright, which is why they changed all the characters, obviously all the character names, but it didn't work. They still got in trouble for that. But actually, and one thing you mentioned is depending on the version you watch, there are of the 1922 silent Nosferatu. There are versions you can watch that have the made up names like Count Orlog, and there are also versions with the names from the book where he is called Dracula, and all the other names are correct.
Okay, I didn't know
And
that.
that's probably part of the reason. One of the reasons why this one went that route. Also, maybe coincidentally, I'm not sure. 1979 actually happens to be when the Dracula book actually went in the public domain, so they didn't have to pay for.
Oh,
I don't think they had to
interesting.
pay for the rights or negotiate anything when making this movie. So they're like, yeah, we can just call him Count Dracula in this. That's fine. However, one change that
Yeah.
does bother me is this is a version where Lucy and Mina's names are switched, where our female protagonist is named Lucy, and I find it really distracting. And also, weirdly enough, the Frank Langella one mentioned earlier, which also released in 1979, does the exact same thing, where Lucy and Mina's names are switched, and I don't get why.
Very
That's strange.
strange.
Very weird that that happened the same year.
1979 was just a weird year.
It was, for a lot of reasons.
Um. Okay, so let me ask you guys, because I thought it was awful. How did you guys feel about the Nosferatu design?
I like it. It's
I thought he
very,
looked like
very subdued.
I thought he looked like I thought he looked like the silent, more so than the Eggers, the Bill Skarsgård version, which I I will admit I didn't get used to that when I first saw it. But I like it now. Yeah, I thought the design was pretty solid.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
aside from,
I
oh, sorry, go on, Noah.
oh yeah, I was just gonna reiterate that I do think that he has presence.
Yeah, the only thing that's like really consistent like throughout all three designs is the pale skin and like the long fingernails. That's the main thing that
Yeah.
sticks. Yeah, and the most monstrous thing about him really is just the rat teeth, which I can understand finding that goofy, but that's taken from the original. But the original design, again, what I find interesting about comparing and contrasting all three is the first one is a lot, the silent one is a lot more monstrous. He looks more like a rat. He's meant to look more inhuman. This one a lot more subdued. uh and then you get to the Robert Eggers one, where it removes some of those iconic features but really leans into the idea of him being a living corpse, which is monstrous in its own right.
Yeah.
But again, as part of a piece, like as part of like the legacy of these Nosferatu movies, again, I find those choices interesting, even if this isn't my favorite.
Yeah. Well, and something that I really like about the is, and similar to talking about the originals, is how they light Count Orlok in that movie, and they really rely on shadow and keeping him in shadow, which is something, John, that I will give you that this movie does kind of that
Noah, you're
hard
cutting out.
Oh shit. Okay. I'll jump out for a second.
That's fine. And he's gone. And he's back.
I'm back. How do I sound?
A little bit better. Say something again.
Something again?
That's better.
There you go. Okay. What point were you trying to make?
Okay. Yeah. Well, this movie does lack the kind of high contrast lighting that the other two movies have. I don't think that it necessarily takes away from the horror. I do think that this movie relies more on like the surrealness of some of the choices that they do with like the plague stuff in the movie, and also
Yes.
the soundtrack, which we haven't really talked about a lot, but we can get into that too. I really love the score in this movie, and it's got a very dreamlike kind of feeling that in a way makes it more creepy to me.
Mhm. Yeah, I like the score a lot, though it is very repetitive. So for somebody who does find this movie boring, that could contribute to that because it is a very repetitive score. But I think it sounds cool.
Fair enough.
I just finished this movie and I can't think of the score offhand, so I don't have a whole lot to say about that. Just
Oh.
Yeah. And like I said, I still enjoy the atmosphere of this. I love the opening credit scene, which I find very disturbing and haunting. It's where we're
Yeah.
in like catacombs and looking at like these mummified corpses, which are real, by the way. Herzog went to a
Oh.
museum in Mexico. Yeah, those are real people died from a cholera, I think, which a big
beautiful.
and but Herzog shot that scene himself, and he arranged the bodies from like so you're going from like these children, and they get older. You know, like the camera moves to these older looking mummified corpses as it goes, and I think it's a very creepy, effective opening credits sequence. I think it's very haunting, and
Wow.
where I think the directions shines is when you get to the plague stuff, and you get those big wide shots of the people walking with all the coffins. And there are a couple really beautiful
Yeah.
shots of just like these huge crowds of just lines of people carrying these coffins. Like they look like snakes, like the way they're moving through the town square. It's very creepy. And yeah, like so there is a lot of imagery in this that I think is effective that really works.
Yeah. Something that I appreciate a lot about this version, but it's not something that I necessarily need a version of the story, is how they focus on the kind like the breakdown and the degradation of the society during the
Yes.
plague, because you have that sequence where she like stumbles upon everybody partying and
Yeah.
like being crazy, not caring about the plague. I thought that was cool to see, but I kind of prefer it being more in the background in the Eggers, in something like the Eggers version. That's the main focus to me, but it was cool to see this version.
Yeah, I really like that bit. And again, some of the imagery is just so revolting because you see just these rats everywhere on all these
Yeah,
tables, food and shit. And then the guy there says like, "Yeah, this is our last supper." We it's very they have a very defeatist attitude of, "Well, we're all gonna instead of quarantining ourselves, we're gonna die. So fuck it, let's just have a party and eat, drink, and be merry. This is our last day to
yeah,
have fun." And it's just very grim. That scene I think is quite effective.
It'd be nice if the movies like look reflected that grim attitude instead of being overly bright and
But I think that contrast works. In my opinion, you know, it's very bright, sunny, and everyone's lively and having a good time. But there's these fucking
yes.
rats everywhere.
That's my favorite look for a
yeah.
vampire
It works.
movie, bright and sunny.
There's usually daytime scenes.
No, but
in
it's like the
vampire
contrast
movies.
that makes it creepy.
Yeah. But like all
I
the
don't
stuff I think the stuff in the castle is lit dark.
You still get a little bit of that. I think it's mostly with the skin tones. They look off in the castles.
I think it works.
Yeah, well, yeah, and a lot of the movie takes place during the day too, so that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think it still retained, creepiness to it, though. I do prefer that more high contrast approach in the other movies.
Wait, Noah. So you're telling me that you prefer when your vampire movies look like vampire movies and are gothic and creepy?
Yeah, but I also think that vampire movies don't have to have a uniform style. Like, I think
Agreed.
people should be
But
able
I
to
mean,
do
even with me saying that,
whatever they want with the
I don't think
genre.
with what I'm describing there's a uniform style. Like Nosferatu doesn't look like the '92 Dracula.
No, it doesn't. No.
You can still fit within the aesthetics of the
Right.
thing that you're making without it looking terrible.
And that's subjective. Like you think
Right.
it's terrible, and I don't. I like the
We just don't think it looks terrible.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course it's subjective, but I mean, isn't that the point of having a discussion about it?
Sure. But like I said, this is a very low key,
Yeah.
naturalistic looking movie. And I think that's interesting. I also just think watching this one is interesting from a historical perspective, especially compared to the original, which is a German film made in the 1920s, and as mentioned in the live chat, was uh, adapted Dracula book, but also leaned into the stuff about and added the subplot of the plague going on, drawing from the real history. And then you get to this film, which is made by a German filmmaker, and this is during that like new wave of German cinema. Like this is a post World War II Germany, which is very different than the Germany that made the first Nosferatu
Yeah.
movies. So there is a very, again, back to like defeatist attitude we were talking about with the supper sequence. Like there's a very grim, melancholy tone to this. That again, I find interesting and artistic.
Right.
I mean, I won't deny that this movie's artistic. Like, obviously, this doesn't look like nobody wanted to make it. My argument is that this is the wrong look for this material, and I think you can definitively say that for a creature that is supposed to come out at night, the movie should reflect the kind of movie that you're making.
And that's where we fundamentally disagree. It's like you're allowed to not like what it's going for, but I don't think you can say, "Oh, well, there should be an agreed upon look or attitude for this." Like if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, and that's fine. We're just coming at
Because
it
for
from an
me,
angle.
that comes down more to preference than
Yeah, that's a personal taste thing.
I have. Yeah. I mean, I totally get what you're saying. It's just like, I don't know. People should be able to do what they want with a certain genre. I think so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to dissuade people from doing what they want to do, but if it looks bad, I'm going to tell them it looks bad.
And we don't think it looks bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
would you want a werewolf movie that looks like every scene is in broad daylight? That'd be kind of weird, right?
Depends on the take.
I don't think the night scenes look there in broad daylight.
Yeah, I don't have that either. And again, it's like the scene on the boat with Dracula where it's like pitch black, but then when he comes into frame, he's very well lit. Like they got a spotlight or something on him. And to me, that's a specific choice. And you're allowed to not like it, but I think there are plenty of dark, creepy scenes.
Right, there is a darkness to this movie. It's not. I don't see the high, like blown out kind of thing that you see it as. But I do prefer I prefer the visual style of the other two Nosferatu movies.
Yeah.
I guess it's something that we touched on briefly, but I wanted to get into it more was I don't know how I feel about the creative choice to change the names back to the Dracula versions.
I was really fucking stupid.
Just because it does make it a bit confusing. Because like when Dracula in this movie is introduced, it's like I'm looking at Count Orlok, but they're like, "Hello, Count Dracula." Yeah, I mean, I guess, but
it's super
that's just not
distracting.
the definitive look for Dracula. Yeah.
It's super distracting, and to me, I think that makes the Orlok design worse. If you're going to do that design, you cannot call him Dracula. That's dumb.
Respectfully disagree, because Bela Lugosi's Dracula, the most iconic one, doesn't look like how Dracula looks in the book.
And this one does?
No. It's not what it's about.
I'm not talking about as an adaptation. I'm talking about there is an agreed upon look for Dracula. The character of Dracula. We always go to the same well. If you're going to do Dracula, I don't want monstrous Dracula because that's not Dracula. Dracula is supposed to be a seductive looking, a person who can seduce people into his grasp to feed on them or to enslave them.
Yeah. This guy's pretty seductive.
This guy looks like a weirdo that you'd kick down the sewer.
And
I mean, he is very rat-like.
Yeah, which comes from, I don't know. I the name thing doesn't bother me, though. I would have preferred if they just used the made-up names from the first Nosferatu movie. What I find more distracting is just switching Mina and Lucy's names. That irritates me. But again, reminder that like there were versions of Nosferatu, the silent one, released with the book names, so there was precedent for that. So I think when you know that historical context, it's less jarring.
And
I think the first time I watched this, I was like, oh, we're just using the book names. That's weird, but it's a hybrid of the two and its own thing. And again, given that this is made by a German filmmaker who was very influenced by the German Nosferatu movie, it's leaning more into that, but also pulling some stuff from the book, more than it's looking at like the American films.
Then don't call it Nosferatu.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Because it's either a Dracula movie or it's a Nosferatu movie.
Yeah, but those things are very closely interlinked.
Yes.
For me, it was more so just like kind of distracting in the moment. Also, with how different some characters in this movie are characterized differently than the Dracula versions. Like the Van Helsing character in this is very just like, oh, you're just sick. You need some rest, and he doesn't listen to Lucy in this.
But that's what I'm talking about. Is yes, they are very similar, but there are key differences in the two adaptations. So when you just take a name from another adaptation and slap it into this one, it doesn't work.
I think there's enough of Nosferatu in here that it doesn't bother me. It is definitely the most kind of distinct from the other two, but I think there's enough of that iconography and the look of the vampire.
Then call them the names in Nosferatu.
We don't need to go over this over and over again.
Well, I think it's like Robert said. It's very much a hybrid of the two, in the same way that the Eggers version is. I think that's a bit more successful at doing that, but I see what this is trying to do.
And the Eggers one is also pulling stuff from the book that's not.
And yet it somehow managed to keep the correct names.
Correct to the original film.
Yeah, because it's a Nosferatu movie.
And as I said repeatedly, the original film was released both with made-up names and the names of the book. I don't know how many times I need to say this point.
Okay, but at this point we've differentiated them.
Okay, but this is a 1979 movie, John. This isn't made in 2025.
Okay, sure. Just let them do whatever the hell they want. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not.
but I think I don't think it's about making sense or not. It's just
I could also
creative
argue that it's
choice.
weird that that Nosferatu, the original, tried to do both. Pick a lane.
Well, I'll just say that like it makes sense to me why the choice was made. Like I get it. It's not that it doesn't make sense. It's just distracting. It's slightly distracting to me, like, the movie.
Yeah.
Is
And
nitpick.
yeah, and I think the main through line that connects every version of Nosferatu and why it is called that is giving Mina or Ellen, or in this case Lucy, a bit more agency and her sacrifice. That's obviously the big thing that carries over, and how she tricks him and uses sunlight to defeat him. And I think that whole scene's great. I think she's great. Again, very creepy, very subdued. Although we haven't really talked much about the ending of this, which is very different.
The ending is
And
dumb.
Yes.
That was the
No,
part I was
what I
watching this, so I was
disagree.
like, what the hell is happening?
I thought the ending. I thought the ending was very tragic. I did have for a second the what the hell was happening kind of thing, because like Van Helsing comes up and then yeah, one of the like funnier moments in the movie was when they were like, "Oh yeah, arrest him." Oh no,
Yes.
all the cops are gone. Like, oh, okay, where do we take him?
Yeah.
And
Just take him out of here.
that was awful.
Uh,
That was nothing like the tone of most of this movie. That didn't belong
It's-
here.
There's a lot of dark comedy in this movie.
That wasn't dark comedy. That was outright a farce.
I wouldn't call it a
Well, it's
farce.
dark because it's dark because the whole town has fallen victim
Yeah,
to the plague.
the guy is
So they have
asking
no-
sincere this 80-year-old man is asking sincere questions of, I'm not a policeman. What do we do?
Yeah.
Like, do we take him to prison? Who's gonna watch him? Like, yeah, it's a dead
Yeah.
town, it's a dead city. So I'm with it. I appreciated the dark comedy of it. Again, like, it is silly, just the way that scene is staged and paced, with Van Helsing coming in and then Jonathan ratting him out. And yeah, it's very bleak.
And the
Like Noah
blood
said.
looks terrible.
So yeah,
But it looks like it has kind of a Hammer quality to it.
I mean,
Just a
to be
bright
fair,
red.
Hammer blood didn't look very good either.
yeah,
It looks better than the Dawn of the Dead blood, and I love Dawn of the Dead, so I
Mm,
don't care.
I don't know about that.
but what I was saying is like during all that scene, I was confused of why Jonathan was trying to rat out Van Helsing. I was like, what's going on here? And then you get that reveal.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I don't know what you're about to say, John. I guess I can see why that's dumb from a certain point of view.
Real quick, sorry, Noah.
I just found it, sad. But
No, so I'm glad you pointed that out, because I wasn't talking about that part, because I didn't have time to like process what the hell I saw at the final shot. The part that I thought was dumb and didn't need to be in this movie was just the three arguing about who's going to take that guy to jail. That's a Three Stooges bit.
oh, I see.
No,
Yeah.
I don't mind the idea
You-
of Jonathan being a vampire at the end afterwards. I think that could be a cool idea. Again, I don't know. I'd have to watch this movie again, which I don't want to do. I don't know if this movie has earned that, but I like that in concept. But the problem is that it follows a Three Stooges bit, so I don't. It's very tonally uneven.
That's fair. I thought that the tone worked in that scene, and I forgot my point. No, I just thought it was a tragic note to end on, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about before with this Nosferatu being a bit more of a tragic, pathetic kind of figure. Is that
Yes.
this is like a tragedy that's just going to continue.
Yeah.
and go on throughout Jonathan's life. Maybe he'll find someone that will be his successor. Um, yeah, it's just like a kind of somber note to end the movie on.
Mhm. Yeah, it's I think appropriate for this take on the material because the original and especially the Eggers one really leans into like this fairy tale quality and like this definitive ending. This is more grim and ambiguous, and like you said, it's the cycle. It's the part of the curse, you know. It's the cycle that's gonna go on forever.
Mhm.
And another plot thing this carries over from the original Nosferatu that I think is a fantastic change from the book. It's just correct when adapting this is making Renfield uh, Jonathan Harker's superior and him being the
Yeah,
one to send him. I think that's just a correct choice. But in both this and the silent film, what issue I have is we have the scene of Renfield escaping, and then nothing really comes of it. That doesn't really. It feels kind of superfluous to me. And then I think the Eggers one has a really clever, fun way to conclude his story when we see how he dies in that version. So
yeah,
just from a narrative perspective, for me, the Eggers one just checks all the right boxes and hits all the right notes for me that I personally find the most fulfilling and interesting. Like it's probably my favorite of these, but this one. Again, for the mood, for the atmosphere, for the bleak, melancholy tone to it, and especially with that ending and the Last Supper sequence, all that stuff I really like and I appreciate it.
We're at about 40
yeah.
minutes, so I'm gonna have us move into the next segment. Or that's not the right word, but starting with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover about this movie?
I think we hit everything. Yeah, basically just I'm with Robert a lot. I preferred the other versions of this story, but I respect what this is trying to do.
And Robert, is there anything else that you would like to talk about with Nosferatu?
No, I think we hit all the major points.
Okay. Sounds like Noah just gave us final thoughts instead of if there's anything else that he wants to talk about. So
Well,
Noah,
I don't know.
no, you're fine. Since this is a review, what is your rating out of 5?
Oh yeah. I think I'd give this maybe like a 3.5. Um, it's solid. I respect it for what it is. I want to check out the English version at some point. I know that I think the consensus is the German is the superior version, but I would like to see how those two things contrast. Other than that, I don't know if I'll really go back to this movie a lot, but I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say on that point specifically is I do know I read that Isabelle Adjana was dubbed, but it wasn't clear to me if she was dubbed in both versions or just the German one
I
because
just had the page up.
Okay.
watching the English one I was like, okay, I think her voice sounded like this in Possession because I don't think she was dubbed in that movie, but I
Interesting.
haven't seen that film in a while, so that was just the last little factoid I wanted to throw
So
out there.
on Wikipedia, the voiced by is a German actress, so I'm guessing she was dubbed over for the German release.
Uh, okay. Well, whoever dubbed her did a good job.
I'll take your word for it. Robert, final thoughts and rating.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, what I find more interesting about this film is how it compares to the other two, more than as a singular piece. For me, I don't see myself rewatching this a lot. Again, just the 1920s German expressionism over stylized like you get in the original. This is a lot more naturalistic and somber. The Eggers one more literally Hollywood, but also more bombastic and theatrical. And so I think how this fits in the broader canon of Nosferatu is interesting for me. There And I'm right there with Noah. I'd give this a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's a good film. I think it's interesting. I like it. It's not my favorite. There are also people. I should say there are people out there that think this film is a masterpiece. There are people who love this movie. I'm
They're
not there
wrong.
with it. But yeah, this I just want to point out that this is a beloved film, and I totally get it. There's a lot more I need to see from like the new like the German new wave cinema from this era. Like Werner Herzog seems like a cool dude. I haven't seen much of his filmography. I'd be curious to watch more. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the gist of it. I like this movie.
I'd be curious to see an original movie from him. Yeah, I mean, I've said a lot.
I've only. I was just gonna say I've only seen his documentary Grizzly Man, which is pretty good.
Okay. I've said most of my piece. Just if I want a vampire movie, I want a scary vampire. I want the gothic atmosphere. This doesn't deliver on anything that I think a vampire movie should deliver on. The main villain is pathetic for 90% of the runtime, and I don't feel bad for him in the end. It's got a cool idea for a different ending, but that's cool. You flopped 95% of your movie and then managed to salvage the last 5%. This is a 1 out of 5. I will never watch this again. I don't get why people like it.
Well, it sounds like it just wasn't made for
Damn.
you, and that's fine.
I never said it wasn't.
Going off. I don't know why. I didn't expect you to be this negative on it.
But yeah, Noah, thank you for making me watch this. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I forget, John, like, because John, you've seen the silent version.
Yes.
Did we cover that on the channel? I don't remember.
I have covered it.
John and I did.
I think Noah and I did. My biggest cinematic weakness is I struggle with silent films.
It's totally fair.
Yeah, that is the only one that I've been able to enjoy. I like it. I much prefer the Eggers one. The Eggers one is everything I could want in a vampire movie. It's peak.
And also, one thing I love about the Eggers one is that it is a Christmas movie, so I hope we do a commentary on it in December.
I'd love
That'll
to.
be better.
Thank you guys for watching, and if you liked this review, or if you just want to curse at me because I shit all over your favorite film, please leave a comment below. I will happily read it. Have a good night, everybody.